Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. After the two four-player games have finished, I have a solid position in the standings. I'm in the lead at the moment, being at 9 points after a win in the second place in those four-player games. Erock is 2 points behind me at 7, while MV is at 4, and Tim, of course, has resigned from this stage of the tournament. And with his resignation, it means that now, after the four-player games, there will be three-player games coming between me, Erock, and MV. And the first one, the one that we are taking a look at today, is the original three-player games, while the other two were started a bit later when it was clear that Tim actually resigns from the stage. So now, with that, we will now take a look at the real three-player games, the one that would have been played originally between me, Erock, and MV. Now, without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. Alright, in this game I'm playing in the second position, and first of all we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we have some theater leaders in age 3 with Marlene Dietrich and Fleming. There's no Hollywood, however. There's Pierre together with the internet. We have Steve Jobs and Marie Curie as well as Einstein as some lab leaders. There's the space flight, there's the Manhattan Project. There's no Gandhi, no Churchill. There's also no Red Cross. In H2, we have the Ocean Liner Service, Railroad, we have Suez Canal and James Cook for some colonization payoff and also generally some strong wonders. We have Nobel but no Newton. We have Bach maybe to go into a bit of a theater synergy. And then there's Darwin also as a cultural leader. Maria Theresa is there together with the Ocean Liner Service. And then Napoleon and Robespierre as military action leaders. Shishka is there as military action leader in H1. Genghis Khan and Nostradamus can help with the strength. Eleanor and Columbus could be nice transitional leaders. Also, both maybe could help setting up for Suez Canal. And then we have Gutenberg but no Leonardo. We have the Silk Road and Universitas, the St. Peter's Basilica but no Forbidden City, the Great Wall but no Emichi Castle, and the Machu Picchu is there. MV is playing in first position, he just grabs Aristotle, that should be a fine pick. And if you remember the two four-player games, in both of them I actually took Moses, and now the question is, do I again, for the third time in a row in this World Championship stage, actually go for Moses? And there's definitely a good case for him. I could maybe take him and the Hanging Gardens, I could take him and a Richland, and I definitely thought about going for Moses here, maybe together with the Hanging Gardens or the Richland. There are other options though, for example I could just take the Colossus, I don't get a yellow card together with it, but with that strong colonization payoff and Columbus, Eleanor, maybe some snudgies in the game, the Colossus is definitely quite a solid wonder. However, at the end I wasn't willing to go for that and miss out on a strong yellow card like the Richland. And while it certainly could be an idea to go for Moses here, I at the end decided against going for him. And the reason for that is that one of the leaders that is still in the deck is Hammurabi, and also Boudica is quite a strong leader, of course. And with that, I didn't want to commit to Moses. MV has already taken a leader, so if Hammurabi is revealed, there is a decent chance that he would be on the at least available for 2 civil actions at my turn, and then I don't want to give up on this option with already committing to Moses. And with me going for Hanging Gardens and Richland, and Erock at least taking one other card from a non-discard spot, there are 6 new cards revealed, so a 2/3 chance that Hammurabi will be revealed. And if no Hammurabi is revealed, maybe at least there will be Boudica, or I can go for one of the other leaders. But of course Homer isn't really the greatest combination with the Hanging Gardens, so I was somewhat hoping for Hammurabi here and committed to the Hanging Gardens. Of course, I could also not go for the Hanging Gardens, leave myself open for potentially better wonder like the Library, but I'm somewhat fine with playing with the Hanging Gardens. I think that can be quite a fine wonder. Erock then goes for Colossus and Moses, so he is this game going for Moses. Alex will be discarded, so I was now very interested to see which leaders will be revealed. And sadly no Hammurabi, he's one of the cards that stay in the deck, but at least Boudica will be available for me. MV will this turn go for the Stonehenge and just goes for a very standard turn. Now it's my turn, and I am willing here to pay an additional civil action for Boudica, because Homer and the Hanging Gardens is just really not the greatest combination, because you really don't need a happy face from Homer for quite a long time with the Hanging Gardens, so I rather pay an additional civil action for Boudica here. Not ideal, but still a fine outcome, I would say. I then elect her, build a mine, so nothing is special. I draw a colonization card in the Barbarians. Irok elects Moses, builds a mine, increases his population, takes the Engineering Genius, also a very straightforward turn for him. MV puts the first event into the deck, the development of agriculture is revealed. He pays 2 civil actions for the cartography, which is an interesting choice, but there is some colonization payoff in H2, so having that technology available is not bad, and he also scores an additional science when taking it, thanks to Aristotle, so I guess a fine decision. On the other hand, with the Stonehenge, you can end up being a bit tight on civil actions, so let's see if that maybe comes to hurt him, or what he at the end will be able to pull off with the cartography. He then builds the second lab and increases his population. Now it's my turn. I want to increase my population here. I took a science from Boudica that allows me to be out of corruption after increasing my population and building my second lab. The question is now what to do with my last 2 civil actions. I potentially could have even taken a resource from Boudica that would have allowed me to now increase my population and build a step of the Hanging Gardens if my decision is that I want to use all of my civil actions on my civilization. But I think there are some interesting cards to take. I could go for an early Masonry. Getting Masonry before you finish your HA Wonder and before you haven't gone for any urban building upgrades, I think is quite a strong card to take. And I have some additional science from Boudica, so I do think it could be a valid choice here to just go for the Masonry. I could also consider taking knights. Having them available is not bad, and with Boudica, especially in a 3-player game where it could happen, especially with Iruk having the Colossus, that I have to use her additional resources for the military very early, it is quite beneficial to maybe have a military tech available to not be forced to just build a lot of warriors with her. So taking the knights here I think would also be a very valid choice. I think I would probably rather go for the Masonry, but I went for something completely different. I rather went for a card available for 1 civil action for me, and that card is Columbus. You might of course say, well, do you really want to go for Columbus here? No colony is in hand, but in a game where there is both Suez Canal and Cook in the game, but especially the Suez Canal is of course important, I am often willing to actually go for a Columbus gamble here. I will get a lot of draws hopefully, and hopefully at some point I will find a colony, and then out of the sudden I am already somewhat nicely prepared for the Suez Canal. If I then somehow maybe even win a colony from the deck, I could have already have quite a strong Suez Canal, so I valued it quite a bit. Boudica is a leader that hopefully I will be able to keep, or that will be useful for me for most of H1, so I can use Columbus as a nice transitional leader. I have already spent a civil action to take my leader, so on the upcoming turns I can focus on other stuff. So at the end, Columbus for 1 civil action. I like to take more than any of those cards for 2 civil actions, so I grab Columbus here, and then I have 1 civil action left. I could increase my population, but with the Hanging Gardens and also with having Booty cards, I mean, especially with having the Hanging Gardens, it's not too bad to miss out on the free religion, because you might not need the happy face for quite a while, and sometimes you even want to have the population elsewhere anyway, for example in the military, so missing out on a free religion is not that bad. Missing out on a free warrior is a bit annoying, but if that event should be revealed and my opponents take a free warrior, then at least I basically get the free warrior thanks to Boudica's additional resources. Of course, it costs me a draw, it costs me the ability to not take any of those other things, but I thought the free population is not that valuable as in other cases, and with that I was willing to save up 1 additional food with not going into famine and took that rich land. I then draw 2 cards. Irok increases his population, takes Gutenberg, increases his population again, so I had now some Moses activations, and is interestingly going for an early Gutenberg, interesting in the sense that after building the second lab now he doesn't really know when will be the next chances to use him. There's no alchemy and no printing press in the row, but I mean there are 4 copies of those technologies, so it's not unlikely that at least maybe in 2 turns or something he will be able to get one of those, and saving the 1 resource that thanks to the Gutenberg discount also allows him to finish the Colossus at the next turn, to maybe have a way to spend the civil actions in case there's nothing nice to invest into. He then also takes the Masonry. MV offers an open borders agreement to me, which of course I happily accept. He is willing to take the iron for 2, develops it, goes for an upgrade, just get some production going. Now it's my turn, and I push here because now that Iruk has gone for Gutenberg, and of course I don't know when. I also don't know when he gets those technologies, so I don't know when is the next time we will do some activations. But because of having Gutenberg and because of the additional culture that he will score from him, I was very confident that I hopefully will not be the player with the most culture, and that rather Irok will be that player. And then I thought it's maybe nice to start moving the deck a little bit and put those barbarians into the deck. There's development of politics revealed, and out of the sudden I have some colonies to choose from for Columbus. I draw 3 colonies with the development of politics, and not the strongest ones for Columbus, but still getting 6 resources, getting 3 science and a yellow token and a blue token. Those things are not bad, especially if I can replace Columbus very quickly and keep Boudica now for the most of H1. So I was happy to have drawn those colonies and knowing that I will not get punished now for my Columbus gamble. This turn I just basically use all of my civil actions and my civilization. I increase my population twice, and then I build 2 steps of the Hanging Gardens. Cards to potentially consider would maybe be the Frugality, but I think with the additional food from the Hanging Gardens I don't need, and Happy Faces, I don't need even more food that much, and rather maybe have more civil actions available for the next turn. For example, if there's something like Iron or Alchemy in a row, maybe being able to go for just 1 upgrade and not having to worry about corruption could be quite nice. And if I wouldn't have gotten the Open Borders Agreement, I might really have considered a warfare here, but with having the 3rd military action now, I also don't think that grabbing the warfare is really worthwhile here, and instead I just used all of my civil actions on my civilization, and I again took a science from Boudica. I keep the wealthy and the developed territory. With the Hanging Gardens I don't really need the historic territory, but I wanted to keep my options open for Columbus. I draw the Legion, the Naval Trade Agreement, and an event. Erok Seeds, the development of crafts, is revealed. That allows him to actually finish the Colossus without the engineering genius using the masonry, and with that he has now a relatively clear plan, because he now can finish the Colossus for only 1 civil action and has just enough civil actions left afterwards to actually go for the Universitas, on which he can use both the engineering genius and the masonry very nicely. So when he took the masonry, I felt, it's not that ideal with the engineering genius and the Colossus, but now, and maybe that was already his plan at the turn before, he can actually, he didn't know about the additional resources, but he can now actually finish the Colossus with the masonry, and then use the masonry on Universitas while also being able to use the engineering genius. He then reveals the Legion tactic. Envy takes the Code of Laws for 2 civil actions, so he has basically every turn now taking a technology for 2 civil actions, which is somewhat expensive, but all those technologies have the potential to be quite strong for him. He this turn switches to Yanshishka, is interestingly already willing to elect him this turn, and reveals a fighting band tactic, so is valuing the additional military action, the 1 strength and 1 culture. Maybe also didn't have thought that maybe it just won't have a technology to take available at the next turn for Aristotle, or maybe wants to spend a civil action on something different, like building steps on the Stonehenge, going for iron upgrades, going for Code of Laws, so he just already elects Shishka here. Now it's my turn. With both of my opponents having gotten stronger, I have to use Boudica's resources for the military this turn, but before we go to my turn, I first of all offer a Naval Trade Agreement. I actually want to have the colonization bonus because Envy has taken the cartography, Irok has the Colossus. I felt it's maybe possible that some opponents have put something colonization related into the deck. Of course, then it's maybe also unlikely that they would give me that pact, but I just thought I might want to give it a try, and if that is accepted, maybe I can also put the colony into the deck that I won't use for Columbus, but here the pact gets rejected. I definitely want to have the knights available, however I won't build a knight. It could be an idea just investing into the knights to not just build a warrior with the additional resource from Boudica, but the only tactic that I have knowledge about is the Legion and soon the fighting band tactic. So, and both of my opponents have an infantry tactic, so it's unclear whether they maybe will go for knights later on and reveal a tactic. So I didn't want to commit to knights with not having any tactic to work with, and instead just build a warrior, but in case I will draw such a tactic or just to have some more options. I wanted to have the knights available. But then I said I will build a warrior. And to get out of corruption, I then have to finish the Hanging Gardens and to increase my population. And now I have one civil action left, and that was actually not a clear question, or it was a bit of a difficult decision for me. Because my first instinct was to just take one card and be done with it, maybe another Ridgeland, maybe reserves for some flexibility, maybe dramas for Bach and Marlene, that could certainly be a consideration, even though an argument against the drama, and also one reason why I didn't want to take it, is that that would let the alchemy fall down to one civil action for Erok, who has Gutenberg, and I wanted to let that stay on 2 civil actions so that he at least has to invest 1 real civil action into it, even with using Gutenberg, if he wants to take it. So otherwise, if the drama would be here, maybe that would even be the card that I would like to have here most, being prepared for Bach, also generally just being prepared for 1 more leader, so that I maybe can replace Columbus quickly with being prepared for more leaders. And with having the Hanging Gardens, I maybe can just go for some dramas and be fine with the happy faces for quite a while. But with the alchemy reasoning, I rather thought about those yellow cards, but at the end I thought it's not really good here for me to take a yellow card, because it would really be great for me to start investing into something at the next turn, and there's still a copy of Iron, another copy of Alchemy in the deck, and if one of those copies is available for me at the next turn, I would really like it to maybe just take one of those copies, maybe for 2, ideally even for 1, but it's maybe a bit unlikely, but for 2, go for 1 upgrade and just get some production going. But if I take another card in hand now, I actually have a full hand, which I could solve for the next turn by electing Columbus, but I probably have in 2 more turns that I could use for Boudica, so that could be a solution, but maybe also not that ideal. So I really didn't like it, ending my turn here with having a full hand, which then could cause issues in case I want to go for some upgrades. And with that, I thought about maybe just actually using the Ridgeland that I have in hand to either build a 4th mine or a 3rd farm. With having the Hanging Gardens, I first thought, okay, maybe I can actually afford a 4th mine. But if there's nothing nice to invest into at the next turn, then getting the 4th mine could actually immediately cause some corruption issues, while if I build a 3rd farm, I actually can increase my population at the next turn, so that already allows me to just spend a civil action in my civilization. It allows me to spend some food, making it maybe a bit more easily possible to get out of corruption in case I don't have anything nice to invest into. And with that, I actually built a 3rd farm here, just making it that I don't have a full hand, and at least also getting a bit of production going, allowing me to increase my population at the next turn. There's an ocean liner service in H2. In case I should have a chance to get that ocean liner, then being on 3 farms also is nice in the sense that I don't have to deal with famine issues for quite a while. And so at the end I went for the 3rd farm instead of taking any card. I could have also just developed the knights, but with having no tactics for them, that was a science commitment that I didn't want to do. I also revealed a legion tactic because I wanted to still keep the flexibility of having both colonies available for Columbus. And then I was actually quite happy that I drew the medieval army tactic. Of course, a bit annoying after just having spent a military action to reveal the legion tactic, but still, with having the knights, that felt like a lot. Like I was quite a bit more happy with now being able to go for knights, especially because I will be forced to again use Boudica's resources at the next turn for the military, and now I can use them maybe to go into knights potentially and go for a better tactic. Erok Seeds opens the development of trade routes. He takes the alchemy, and you might notice he does it without using Gutenberg because he already wants to develop the alchemy with Gutenberg. Maybe doesn't want to delay his science upgrade by too much. Then takes the breakthrough, which is a nice card to get for 1 civil action, and builds a warrior. At the next turn he can go for Gutenberg upgrades very cheaply with having the Gutenberg discount and the masonry. Now it's MV's turn, he seeds, so the event deck flips now, the development of settlement is revealed. He will go for the Code of Laws this turn, builds 2 steps of the Stonehenge, also goes for the cartography, increases his population and builds a warrior. Him really prioritizing the cartography is definitely an indicator that there is probably a colony coming. Now it's my turn, I don't want to push. I mean, I could push. Erok would at least get hit by the barbarians at the moment, but I'm also the weakest. MV did also not only put some effort into getting this cartography that not only will help him for colonization, but it also made it that he is the strongest, which could also be an indicator that there are some strength events coming, and I will actually be strongest after my turn, and even that strong that I have some hopes to just remain the strongest for quite a while. And with that, I didn't want to push here, and with pushing, I also would need to commit to one of those colonies, which again, maybe I want to leave myself this decision open for a little bit longer. So I developed the knights, I build a knight, I build another knight, I revealed a tactic going up to 10 strength. There are still 14 cards left in the deck, so I don't need to replace a Boudica right now. And I have 3 civil actions left. I have to increase my population to get out of corruption. And then this time I basically kind of have to go for some yellow cards. I again, of course, could build a mine, but as soon as I lose the 2 yellow tokens, that could cause some issues. I mean, I could then go for the developed territory, get a yellow token back, but yeah, I didn't want to commit to a 4th mine here in addition to the 3rd farm, and instead this turn was just fine with taking 2 yellow cards, the cultural heritage for some additional science, and the rich land for some quicker mine upgrades at some point. Then it's Eroc's turn. He builds a warrior, going up to 7 strength, making it that he isn't the weakest. Uses Gutenberg for lab upgrade. Uses the engineering genius, because he could potentially lose it before his next turn on the Universitas, and then takes the engineering genius 1, which now again doesn't work that well with the masonry. Maybe, who knows, he will again delay it and use it on the next wonder, but just the additional resources are still extremely valuable for him. Envy finishes the Stonehenge this turn, builds a warrior, builds another warrior, making it that he isn't the weakest, goes for an upgrade, is now at 4 culture income, so now it will be quite close between my opponents, who will be the target for the barbarians. After his turn, Envy will now have more culture than Eroc and would get hit by the barbarians. He takes the alchemy in the bread and circuses. It's my turn now, and I think I push here. Yes, I push the wealthy territory into the deck. I'm now the strongest. I could just get rewarded by some events, even a colony. If one is there, might be better. It might be better to see it during my turn than during an opponent's turn. So now I was willing to go for a commitment. Of course, it could potentially backfire, seeding a colony with both of my opponents having colonization bonuses. But at least now that the event deck has flipped, it will take a little while until that will be revealed. And so I was willing to go for the seeding, and I decided to keep the developed territory for Columbus because I still need to get into government form. I will actually this turn go into iron upgrades, and with that maybe I don't need the additional resources as much as I will need the additional science. And so I rather kept the developed territory for Columbus here. I do get rewarded, not the barbarians are revealed, but the foray, which I'm now part of. I will use the foray to take 2 resources and 1 food, so I'm just 1 food now away from being able to increase my population, but I didn't plan to increase my population this turn anyway, and that makes it that at the next turn, when I then maybe want to increase my population, I will have just enough food saved up to increase my population, and then I will be able to just spend all of my food. And as you can see, I will this turn go for iron. It's of course a late iron. And often I have said during my videos that I don't prioritize late irons that much, and that I'm often not willing to go for something like a late iron for 2 civil actions, but you also have to be careful to not enter H2 with not having done any upgrades to your economy. You otherwise might get overloaded. Of course, I could also go into something like monarchy. None of my opponents has already gone for a government form, so the H2 government forms might be quite contested. But I have already my 3rd military action, and just without knowing whether I will get a code of laws, that copy might be taken away by Eroc. I just didn't want to be stuck on 5 civil actions for quite a while, and rather wanted to leave myself open for an H2 government form. I could even just take St. Peter's Basilica and build 2 steps. A little bit more happy faces I might actually need relatively soon, but still it didn't feel like the greatest investment, and I just rather wanted to get some resource production going here, especially because there are some interesting H2 wonders which will be easier to build if I have already some good production. So I go for the iron, I go for an upgrade, I elect Columbus because next turn I wouldn't get the civil action back. I again take a science from Boudica, and with not taking a food and a resource, I'm just able to get out of corruption by upgrading a mine and also building a knight. Building the knight may be a little bit questionable, but keeping the strength lead could be beneficial, which I might be able to do without the knight, but it's not unlikely that there's a colony coming, or maybe even multiple colonies, and with that, having an excess knight to be able to bid for a colony while not dropping too much in strength could be quite nice, and so I thought it's not too bad to have the knight, and it's also just a way how I can get out of corruption. At the next turn I can then maybe complete my iron upgrades, going up to 6 production, and then I just need to hope maybe for a good H2 wonder, maybe the ability to get into an H2 government form quickly, because if those things are not available, maybe my position could be a bit tricky with still being stuck on 4 civil actions and maybe having some issues to invest my resources. I draw some cards. I, of course, was all the time still hoping for maybe even a better colony, but for now I keep the developed territory 1 for Columbus. H2 starts, E-Rock draws some additional cards from the Colossus. He uses the Engineering Genius in the Universitas, so this time he isn't able to play around the Masonry nicely, but it allows him to finish the Universitas a turn earlier, which then again allows him to maybe go for the Republic at the next turn. However, he isn't preparing himself perfectly here for a government form, because with his last 2 civil actions he's actually taking a Theology in the Breakthrough. Understandable, of course, that he wants to have a way to fix his happy faces, but now it's so late, maybe he could just wait for an H2 happy face solution, because the issue is now that he has enough science to go in for a government form, but he has a full hand, and if that government form is available only for 3 civil actions, he now wouldn't be in a spot to take it, and I think I would just skip one of those cards and increase my population here. But of course, if he doesn't have knowledge about rebellion, it would feel quite bad not having a clear way to fix his happy faces soon. Then again, he doesn't have enough resources to build a Theology at the next turn, so that one will be delayed quite a bit anyway, and with that I think I would have just skipped the Theology here and increased my population rather. Now it's Envy's turn. He seeds and opens the strategic territory, and as you see, I'm actually willing to bid quite a lot for that one. I was willing to bid an army here, and actually only 1 card, interestingly. Maybe I could even go for 2 cards, but of course that would be quite a high bid then. The thing is, I have now this excess knight anyway. I can send an army away, and if I then just build 1 warrior, I again am at 2 medieval army tactics, and together with the 2 strength from the strategic territory, I am still very comfortably having the strength lead. Additionally, with Zeus Kennel and James Cook being in the game, it is just quite important, if it is somehow possible, to make it that you are the only player having colonies, because that makes it a lot more likely that you actually will end up getting the Suez Canal. And then, lastly, we just entered H2, which generally makes the additional draws from the strategic territory quite valuable, but here I have Columbus, and if I get a bit lucky, it's basically like if you have him with the Colossus, I could get I could win the jackpot here and maybe draw a very strong H2 colony with those draws, which then certainly would make it worthwhile to have sent an army for that colony. And with all of those reasons combined, I thought, I should definitely bid an army. Looking back at it, I think I should have even bid an army in both of my, or maybe probably I bid both of my, I think I very likely bid both of my colonization cards. Of course, that's 6+. So yeah, I think I bid both of them. At least that's what I would do now. And yeah, I win the colony. Now, of course, I was very interested to see, did I draw a strong colony? Sadly not. At least a tactic that I maybe can use at some point, also in freedom of movement, so an event to see it, but yeah, sadly no colony for now. I was interested to see what Envy would do during his turn, because I was really eyeing Nobel here, or potentially the scientific method, and I thought that I might just take the card that Envy leaves available for me. And I was surprised to see that his turn starts actually by him taking drama for 2 civil actions. That surprised me a little bit, but of course we see Bach coming down the row, and maybe he just wanted to be prepared for Bach. There's also Marlene and Fleming in H3, so having those 3 dramas might be nice, but he has some iron production at the moment, not the most population income. I don't think it's a position where I would like to spend 2 actions in the drama. He then goes for the alchemy for 2 upgrades, so he does do some economy upgrades now. But I think I might have even preferred to just, instead of going for the alchemy, take the scientific method, go for 1 scientific method upgrade, which leaves him at the same science production, and then he has the ability to go for another upgrade and to even go up to 6 science income. But he will actually get Bach at the next turn, and he will then be able to actually make use out of the drama, so maybe I am just have other priorities here. Maybe I'm a bit more economy focused, but in a 3-player game, it certainly can work to go for a bit of a culture push. So those dramas potentially could open the door for MV to just take Bach and then try to create a nice setup for him where he can maybe defend himself nicely and then just run away with the culture. That actually means now that both Scientific Method and Nobel are available for me. And I decided to go for Nobel here early in H2. Nobel is just so insanely strong. The 2 science production makes a big difference for me, and I can get the science income without having to do some investments, making it maybe possible that I can go for a government form earlier, while if I invest into Scientific Method now, I spend quite a bunch of science on it and resources. So if I have the chance to go for a government form, then it would take quite a while until I can develop it, and that was just it's just an important difference, I think, here. And yeah, so with wanting to go for Nobel, I decided to not longer wait with Columbus to potentially draw a better colony. Instead, I just went for the developed territory 1, go for Nobel, and then go for an upgrade. 1 additional blue token from the developed territory is relevant immediately, with allowing me to be out of corruption. And even without rebuilding the warrior, I'm now at 11 strength and still comfortably have the strength lead. As you can see, there's actually a Republic on the row, which of course also could be a strong card to have. But yeah, I think Nobel is more important. At least I let the Republic stay in 3 civil actions, and now Eroc's decision of ending his turn with a full hand might actually come to bite him, because he can take the Republic, he can develop something and take it, but then he doesn't have the civil action to develop it. So if he wouldn't have had a full hand, he could maybe have gotten quite a big boost here from the Republic. I draw some cards. I would have actually drawn some strong colonies if I would have kept Columbus, but no, I think it was definitely the correct choice to go for Nobel here. Eroc develops the Swordsman, maybe doesn't want to be the weakest any longer, goes for some upgrades, takes the Code of Laws, develops it, and takes the Selective Breeding. There would have been a Conmon now as well, but he just lets those government forms stay on their own. He actually takes the Scientific Method with Gutenberg, maybe just to score some culture, or who knows, maybe he even plans to go for some upgrades. Now it's MV's turn, he seeds, and a cultural influence is revealed, which gives him some additional culture, something that could even come to bite him, because the barbarians are still lurking in the deck. For now, MV has clearly the culture lead, so that might cost him a population, which he then might really miss for a potential Bach setup with dramas. He takes Bach, he has invested into those dramas, so it's of course a consequent follow-up, and then he has some civil actions left, takes the selective breeding, goes for an iron upgrade, and takes the reserves. And it's an interesting choice, because he is just passing on all of those government forms, and who knows, there could now be a chance that all of those will be discarded, and he then doesn't know when he will get the last one, but at least he is on 5 civil actions, maybe can invest into the selective breeding first, maybe into something like Rifleman at some point, so he will have other things to invest the science into, and maybe is fine with waiting a little bit longer in case those are taken away. Now it is my turn. I see the freedom of movement. I'm the strongest. I want to push, but I, with not having a colonization bonus, didn't want to put one of those strong H2 colonies in the deck necessarily. And immigration could be fine. Especially both of my opponents at the moment have an unhappy worker, but it also will take a while until it will be revealed. If I increase my population a bunch of times, I could even have some happy face issues, especially because I will actually go for the ocean liner service this turn. And when I then get a lot of population at some point, maybe I will have an unhappy worker. Of course, then maybe it also doesn't hurt me as much to lose a worker, but I at the end rather went for the freedom of movement, because in case I go for the fortifications tactic, that could actually be quite a helpful event, and just having knowledge about it will maybe help me to get better use out of it than my opponents. The barbarians are still not revealed. Instead, another colony, the inhabited territory. I was willing to bid an army in my colonization card, trying to maybe again stay the only player who is prepared for a Suez Canal, but this time MV is able to win it. At least he has to send 2 warriors away, so it doesn't come at a cheap price for him. Now it's my turn, and it's definitely clear that I will go for a government form here. The question is, what do I want to go for? Republic or constitutional monarchy? I have a 3rd military action, but it is only temporary, because the Open Borders Agreement will of course be cancelled at the end of H2. With that, of course, the Conmon would just fix both my civil action and my military action needs. But I went for the Republic here, because the additional civil action that I get out of it makes immediately a big difference already this turn. And I also thought it might make quite a difference for the upcoming turn, so I think during H2 that will just allow me to get quite a boost going economically. Long term, of course, that could cause some issues for me, being stuck on a low military action count, and I don't know if I get the strategy I already committed to an H2 leader, so I can't go for Napoleon or something to fix my military actions. So there is some risk involved, but yeah, I just felt like the additional action at the upcoming turns will make a big difference, and it will make a difference even immediately at this turn. That means that I leave the Conmon to Irok, which is maybe not ideal, because for him I think the Conmon should clearly be the better choice. And that's also why I was willing to take the left copy of Republic, which was maybe a mistake. I think my reasoning was that I wanted to give myself a chance to maybe still see those riflemen at the next turn potentially, but it's maybe unlikely anyway. And if I take the right copy of the Republic and Irok goes for the Conmon, then MV will actually not have the Republic to go for. So I think that maybe was something that I overlooked here, but it, in a sense, actually will end up it will actually work out quite well for me, as we will see. And of course, what we will see soon, I have completely foreseen. Then after the Republic, I will go for the Ocean Liner service. If I would have gone for the Conmon, my turn would have ended already, but now I can increase my population, rebuild a warrior to go even further ahead in strength, and also, importantly, get out of corruption. Of course, with having the fortifications, maybe not building this warrior is not too bad anyway, but I don't know when and if I will get the cannons, and so I thought it's still nice to just get out of corruption here and already increase my population. At the next turn I have just enough resources to finish the Ocean Liner service and then go for a mine upgrade. When I will have done that, I will have fixed my population income, my resource production, and thanks to Nobel I have decent science income, so I was quite happy about how early H2 played out so far, because as you remember, maybe 2 or 3 turns ago I was sitting on 4 civil actions, low science income, and if there would have maybe not been the greatest options available, I could have had some issues, but now I'm on the Republic, I'm with the Ocean Liner and with Nobel, so I was quite happy about the cards that I was able to take early H2 here. I keep the vast territory for potential Suez Canal. With having the Ocean Liner service, of course, maybe could have even kept the wealthy territory, but the additional yellow tokens might still end up being very strong. I then draw the Ravages of Time, a nice event to have knowledge about when you are playing with the Hanging Gardens and the Independence Declaration. Irok goes for the Conmon, develops it, goes for the coal. He is now missing 1 science to go for it at the next turn, so that maybe could have been a reason for him to actually go for the Republic. We will, however, see that after increasing his population and getting out of corruption, he is actually taking the Republic and is denying it from envy. So with me taking the left copy, I actually made it that Irok had now to spend a civil action to go for the denial. It's interesting that he goes for it, because it might cause him some hand space issues, but... And there is the Conmon coming down the row, but MV is just at 11 science, not 12. So I think the Republic maybe could have made his life quite a bit easier, thanks to being able to go into it immediately. Now if he wants to have the Conmon, maybe he has to take it for 2. He can't develop it immediately, so that could be a bit annoying for him and maybe justifies this hate pick. And with him doing that hate pick, I at the end got quite lucky with my decision of taking the left copy. As you can see, I guess it doesn't really count because Irok now took the Republic, but yeah, the Riflemen are, maybe I still have a chance at getting them with MV. Actually, MV has no swordsman, so he might very likely just take them away. Anyway, but yeah, I think I just forgot completely about it, that taking the right copy of Republic also denies it from MV, and then I just got lucky with Irok now having to actually do some actual work to go for the denial. Irok then goes for an upgrade. MV offers an international trade agreement for Irok. That's bad news for me. Not only, of course, is it generally not great to see such an effect accepted relatively early in a 3-player game, but it also means that my open borders agreement is cancelled, meaning from now on I will be playing on 2 military actions. MV plays the reserves, which makes space in hand to go for the Rifleman. He then goes for the Conmon, so a bit of an awkward turn. He builds the Rifleman, goes for an upgrade, gets out of corruption, and also makes sure to not be the weakest. Sadly, that won't be enough, because the top event is the Barbarians. He has the most culture. I, at my turn, will cede the Independence Declaration, which could hit me with my colonies, but I was just hoping that I will remain not the weakest for quite a while longer, especially because this turn I will end up going for the strategy. So yeah, I with that was willing to put that event into the deck. At least MV has now won a colony, so there's a chance he might lose those 2 yellow tokens, which would be quite a setback for him. And with seeding now, the barbarians are revealed, which costs MV a population, which is a bit annoying with his plans of going for Bach. Ideally, I kind of would have liked to spend this turn to just finish the Ocean Liner, go for an Iron upgrade, and then maybe take some cards, cannons for example. But there's the strategy in a row, and I was happy about it, but of course it means that I kind of have to take it, otherwise I very likely will be stuck on 2 military actions for quite a while, because Irok certainly could make the decision to take it, MV could make the decision to take it. So here I was willing to delay the Ocean Liner service by another turn. I could actually take the strategy and finish the Ocean Liner service, but then I wouldn't go for the mine upgrade, and there are actually some other cards that I also would like to take. So I then take the cannons, I take the team sports, because while I have the happy faces from the Hanging Gardens, and with having knowledge about the Ravages of Time, I also have the knowledge that I am able to keep them until the end of the game. But nonetheless, I might need some more happy faces at some point, and there's beyond the game, the internet, so having those team sports I think is quite nice. And then I have still 2 civil actions left, which I will use to increase my population with the rich land, to increase my population and upgrade a mine with my rich land, and then at the next turn I have more than enough resources to finish the Ocean Liner service. I could have also thought about some cards like journalism and opera, but from both of those technologies there's another copy that I maybe could take at some point, and I at the end just felt that getting out of corruption, getting that mine upgrade, the cannons and the team sports is all more important than having those cards available. Irok goes for the selective breeding, goes for an upgrade, takes the breakthrough, the cavalryman, the reserves, and interestingly builds a religion. Interesting that he builds the religion. He could have also gone for another food upgrade. Maybe he's afraid of a rebellion, maybe he doesn't have knowledge about that event and at least doesn't want to lose 6 civil actions if he should get hit by it. And or maybe, I guess, an immigration for that, it doesn't make a difference. So an interesting choice, maybe just afraid of a rebellion potentially. MV seeds, and the good harvest is revealed, which gives me actually 3 food, thanks to the 3rd farm that I built earlier on. MV goes for the selective breeding, can go for 1 upgrade, could potentially even go for a 2nd, but decides against it, maybe wants to go for that upgrade with the rich land. He is already electing Bach this turn, probably mainly because of hand space issues, and at the next turn he can then go for the drama. I seed this turn. I think I seeded the politics of strength, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm still the strongest, so that's the main reason why I want to push. The wealthy territory is revealed, and as you can see, I again am willing to bid quite a lot for that. It was also one of the events that I kind of hoped for, because if I should manage to win that one, and I'm not sure, maybe I was even willing to bid more than an army here, because I have that fortifications tactic, and winning the territory could allow me to go for quite a smooth transition into the fortifications. And additionally, the Suez Canal is still available. I will finish the Ocean Liner service this turn, and then with having yet another colony, the Suez Canal could end up being quite strong for me. So I was happy that I was able to win that colony for an army. I definitely want to finish the Ocean Liner service this turn, and then for the remaining civil actions, it was a bit of a question on whether I rather want to develop the strategy or the cannons this turn. My first instinct was to just develop the strategy, increase my population to get out of corruption, and then at the next turn I could start going into cannons and preparing for the fortifications tactic. The problem with that play is that one of the H2 events that is coming soon is the freedom of movement. And I really would like to be able to put one of those knights or warriors into cannons with the freedom of movement to get an even smoother transition into this tactic. And there's at least a chance that if I don't develop the cannons now, that maybe that event is revealed before my next turn. Of course, if I don't see it, maybe it's not that likely, but it's still possible. Maybe I also kind of would like to have the option to seed potentially. And on the other hand, there is still that Suez Canal coming. The vast territory, while it is of course generally a strong colony, with me having that Ocean Liner service set up, maybe it's not the ideal one, and there would be some colonies that I would prefer. So if I now maximize my draws, maybe I have a higher chance of getting even better colony for the Suez Canal. But I don't know if I get the Suez Canal. Of course, more draws could generally be useful. At least I have my tactic already. So it was a close call for me. But at the end, I didn't want to risk potentially missing out on the nice freedom of movement opportunity to move a knight or warrior into cannon, and so instead of the strategy, I developed a cannon. I played a cultural heritage because there's at least a chance, even though it's maybe not that high, that the age might end before my next turn. I build a cannon and then I take the urban growth. I could have also increased my population. But I felt like getting 3 resources from one action is still quite a nice deal, especially because I likely have to use that urban growth relatively soon, maybe for team sports, maybe I still want to go for lab upgrades. Actually, scientific method will be gone. And also a card that I could have taken, but it's close to age 3. I rather wanted to leave myself open for something like multimedia or computers, where also the urban growth could be quite useful, or the Suez Canal might be something that I also rather want to invest into as next project compared to the scientific method. The journalism also maybe could have been a fine card to take with my many population, but I was rather waiting for age 3 solutions here. And yeah, so I built one cannon, making me the strongest, and then I don't reveal the tactic yet, as maybe that could give my opponents maybe the ability to copy it sooner, or maybe give them a direction into which they want to develop the military attacks. For example, now Irok maybe commits to the cavalryman and then realizes that he maybe should have gone for the cannons with me having this tactic. So I decided to keep that in hand for one more turn. Of course, also because if I reveal it now, I drop in strength, so that was the main reason. So I wanted to remain the strongest here. And yeah, so I end my turn and gain a raid. Irok goes for the coal finally, upgrades it, and is starting to finish his economy upgrades. Goes for Maria Theresa is replacing Gutenberg. He had Gutenberg for quite a while. I'm not sure how well it worked for him, because he had to wait a little bit until he got the alchemy. Then he did those alchemy upgrades, took the scientific method, but then during H2 didn't really find more use cases for him. Maybe got a bit unfortunate with no nice replacement leader being available for him early. I took him Nobel away. He wasn't prepared for Bach. So now he had Gutenberg doing nothing for quite a while, but at least if you get an activation of Gutenberg, it's actually so strong that even if you don't get an activation every turn, it's still some decent value, but it wasn't the ideal Gutenberg game here for Irok. He goes for Maria Theresa, can use her immediately with increasing his population, and then takes the efficient upgrade for some quicker upgrades. Now it's Envy's turn. He seeds, opens the scientific breakthrough. He this turn develops the Conmon, which is actually possible thanks to the scientific breakthrough, so that card being quite strong for him, but it was also seeded by him, so he had knowledge about it, and now thanks to the breakthrough he will not only be able to develop the Conmon, but afterwards he also has enough science left to also go for the drama, which he would lose if he doesn't develop it this turn. So yeah, quite a strong scientific breakthrough, and now quite nice for him that he has the ability to go for both Conmon and drama. He builds the drama, goes for his second farm upgrade. He definitely will need a lot of population for those dramas, builds yet another drama, and then takes the frugality, even more prioritizing to get as much population as possible. Could have also taken a patriotism to maybe help him defend himself, but he really values the additional food here. Now it's my turn. This turn I will develop the strategy to finally get some more draws going. And after building a cannon and revealing the tactic, doing those things during H2 so that I won't miss out on H3 draws because of that, I have some civil actions left. And at the end I decided to just go for the Suez Canal here. I could maybe just go for it at the next turn. Maybe I could go for the architecture and set myself up so that I can just take and finish it at the next turn for cheaper. But I was still a bit afraid that Envy might take it away, who knows. Or actually I know that there are, at least here, no colonies coming, but there could be some more colonies coming. Maybe Envy has seeded some, maybe he would be willing to go for late Suez Canal, and with having 3 plus the one that I have in hand for colonies, I just felt like the Suez Canal is just still quite strong even though it's late, and I wanted at the end to secure that for myself. I take the Suez Canal and then I build a step of it. My first instinct was to increase my population to get out of corruption, as I might have to do that soon anyway, as I will have tons of food stored up as soon as I finish the Suez Canal with the vast territory. But I think building the step gives me an option. First of all, of course, it means that I can finish the Suez Canal, which I really want to do as quickly as possible. So I definitely want to do it at the next turn, unless there is a very specific reason for it. And if I build a step now, I can finish the Suez Canal while having one more civil action to take potential key cards that might be revealed during H3. Of course, you might say, well, you might take those cards, but then you just have corruption. But there's the freedom of movement coming, and if that is revealed before my next turn, if I finish the Suez Canals, I spend 7 resources, meaning I have 3 left, and with the freedom of movement, I could then put a warrior into cannons. And then I would have spent all of my resources, meaning if there is indeed an important key card that I really need to take, and I really need all of my civil actions apart from this finishing the Suez Canal to take something, then I could just finish the Suez Canal and have corruption, but only have food corruption, which, with having the ocean liner service plus getting the vast territory, really wouldn't be that big of a deal. So with that, I built a step of the Suez Canal to get out of corruption. And even with building the step, I still could implement an architecture nicely in case that is still available for me at the next turn. I also get 2 draws, so I was still somewhat hoping for maybe even a better colony. I use the ocean liner service now to increase my population. I will get 2 draws, but no more colonies, instead 2 wars over technologies, which is also interesting because I have 4 military actions. I can potentially build 2 cannons and declare that war over technology. The problem being that if I build 2 cannons, I then have not enough resources. I of course can't finish the Suez Canal at the next turn, and unless I get help from a yellow card, I also don't have enough resources to build the Suez Canal in 2 turns. So I felt like I might only be willing to do that in case I get maybe a freedom of movement revealed before my next turn. But those could certainly be some interesting wars. After MV and Iraq had an international trade agreement, now I actually am on the lucky side again and get offered this international tourism pact. However, in this case, it wasn't a clear decision whether I should accept this or not, because when we take a look at it, Iraq definitely gets more value out of that one than I do. Iraq has 2 wonders, so I get 2 additional culture income. I, at the moment, have 2, but very soon, probably already the next turn, I will have 3 wonders, meaning that Iraq will get 3 additional culture, and he gets an additional production with getting the pact already now. So he definitely gets a lot more value out of it. I thought about how long the game might end up going. We are now at round 12. Often games maybe go around 18 rounds. So after this round, there might be 5 more rounds to play. Or actually, actually 5 to 6, let's say. So Iraq gets now 2 income and then 15 to 18 culture. Let's just say 5 more rounds after this one. So 2 now and then 3 times 5. He would get 17 culture out of it, while I 5 times 2 get 10 culture out of it. So 7 less culture. But the thing is, while I get 7 less culture out of this pact in Iraq in this scenario, I still get 10 more out of it than MV. And there's also, of course, the probably very, very small danger, but the danger that Iraq could offer the pact to MV if I don't accept it now. But at this point, we can also maybe take a look at the overview at the end of Iraq's turn. But MV is, of course, running away with the culture, but I would say the game is generally quite open. Iraq might be able to get some nice value out of Maria, so it's unclear for me at this point which will be the player who I'm maybe closer to at the end. But as I'm getting more culture against MV than Iraq is getting against me with accepting the pact, the chance with me evaluating the position as relatively equal is just higher that maybe the 10 culture against MV will make the difference than that the +7 culture that Iraq gets against me will make a difference. Of course, when there's an additional turn, Iraq gets even more culture against me, but then I also again get more culture against MV, so with that, even though it has clearly been more beneficial for Iraq, I was still willing to accept this pact. If it maybe would have been clear that I and Iraq maybe have the better position and that he might be the more clear contender for the first position, then of course in such a situation I would probably reject the pact, but with that being unclear, I think it's just the best call to me to just accept this pact. Iraq takes the cannons, goes for another coal upgrade, takes the wave of nationalism. This turn isn't able to use the additional resources from Maria, but maybe at the next turn. Then we can take a look at the overview. MV is running away with the culture, with having Bach. I I'm falling behind. Irok is also starting to have a bit more culture than I do, and that's of course a bit of an issue, but soon I will finish the Suez Canal, going up to 10 resource income. I will have lots of population, and so I was hoping that I will be able to build up a strong position during age 3, but of course you always have to find ways to maybe catch up to your opponents. That can be a challenge in age 3, but I still, with getting that Suez Canal, felt that I have some strong tools to close the culture gap in age 3. But no, who knows? And we might run away with the culture. He has at least a solid economy. If he gets some military techs, he can prepare for age 3 tactics, might be relatively safe from the military. Irok has probably, with having Maria, a stronger economy than Envy. Also has some military techs. But as soon as I finished the Suez Canal, I felt, or I hoped, that maybe I have the better economy than he does. On the other hand, he has more science income, and he actually has lots of science saved up, so that also might be a benefit that he has over me. I, on the other hand, have, of course, the strength lead and even the potential to be quite threatening, even with the war over technology, potentially. So, yeah, overall, I felt like every player has a chance to win here. Envy will increase his population, builds a third drama, going up to 12 culture income, takes the cavalryman, the revolutionary ideal, and the engineering genius. Thanks to the reserves coming down the row, I could potentially declare a war over technology, and then with the reserves finish the Suez Canal at the next turn, but the freedom of movement being revealed not only would potentially help me with saving resources to go for second cannon, but also if you take a look at my current situation population-wise, I can increase my population twice with the ocean liner service and with doing it normally. But then I still have 2 unhappy workers and only 1 happy worker, and I didn't want to destroy anything to go for this war. If the freedom of movement would have been revealed, I think I would have been willing to delay the Suez Canal to hit one of my opponents. I would have to think about which one would be the best target, but I think I would hit one of my opponents with a big war over technology. Maybe I could follow it up with a raid or something, but now I would need to destroy something, and that at the end just didn't feel worth it to me. And so at the end, I think I just passed on my politics phase. Actually, I also didn't want to miss out on draws on with that raid. Maybe I could try it, but Irok just got the Colossus draws. Envy has had a lot of draws. Maybe I could try a raid. It's only costing me 1 draw. Maybe I should actually do it. But on the other hand, I will have the better economy. I have to close a culture gap, and maximizing my amount of draws to get as many impacts to work with as possible could also be extremely important. I developed the architecture this turn because I haven't actually still starting into age 3, I still haven't upgraded or built any urban buildings apart from those HA labs, so there are a lot of resources to be saved by having this architecture, and also it leaves me with just enough science so that I can actually go into those computers at the next turn, which I will end up taking. I finish the Suez Canal, I get the vast territory too, I take the computers, and then I get out of corruption by increasing my population 2 times. So I sadly miss out on some yellow cards. Those maybe could have been nice to have, but I wanted to get out of corruption, as I might need to spend those actions soon anyway. I want to have them now out of the way, and I get out of corruption. And while I could have maybe not taken the computers, first of all, both of my opponents could maybe use the computers quite nicely. Irok could go for them, MV could go for them, and maybe make it that he not only has a nice culture reduction, but also out of the sudden is maybe nicely prepared for a bunch of impacts. And I have just enough science to go into computers. It's a nice thing for me to invest into, especially considering that there will be Nobel prizes, there's a space flight in the game, there is Einstein in the game, there's Steve Jobs coming down the row, who could even be available for me at the next turn. So at the end I found it too important to have those computers available here. And now I have quite a bunch of free population and 10 resource income, so my economy is now quite booming. I draw 3 cards, a war, impact of progress, which with my big science income that I hopefully will have soon could end up being quite a strong impact, as well as a colonization card. Irok this turn goes for the organized religion. We see that his theology grab earlier on didn't really work out well. He just discarded that, and that hindered him from going for a government form a turn earlier. But yeah, now he fixes his happy faces, builds a cannon with the additional resource from Maria, doesn't use the wave this turn, maybe wants to wait with that, even though it would have been maybe a nice opportunity, but getting those reserves in Air Forces is of course also important, so the first copy of Air Force is taken, which maybe is also a reason why MP goes for that Manhattan project, where he really doesn't have a big science income, so he mainly builds it for the strength, has now an ability to use the engineering genius too nicely, and is now the strength leader, so with having Bach and with running away with the culture, putting effort into being able to defend yourself is quite important, and yeah, for that the Manhattan project is of course quite helpful. Now it's my turn. I am willing to put the Impact of Progress into the deck, which I could maybe keep it in hand, but I want to give myself the option to ideally seed an impact every turn in case I get lucky enough to draw enough impacts. The reason why I maybe could prefer to wait here is that the politics of strength won't be revealed. Or no, I think it's the freedom of movement and politics of strength that are coming now. So there's a chance that MV will win now the politics of strength, but I don't necessarily want to build 2 cannons anyway, and if I want to do it, it would be ideal to do it with the help of the freedom of movement. So if the politics of strength is revealed now, I'm kind of fine, at least I don't get hit by it. However, if the freedom of movement is revealed first, then that actually could open the door towards me winning the politics of strength, with making it more easily possible to actually go for another army here, while also going for at least 1 computer upgrade. So I see it, and there is the freedom of movement, meaning that the politics of strength is still in the deck. I use the freedom of movement to put a warrior into cannons, and I could now build another cannon to be prepared for the politics of strength. Maybe I should have actually done that. I'm a bit confused. Wait, I think maybe that isn't even the politics of strength, but what event is that? Was it maybe the immigration, or... We will see what event it is. I'm not sure, because maybe I'm confusing this turn with an upcoming turn where I could have maybe increased my strength. Maybe that is actually the politics of strength. Let's see. I actually have forgotten now what the H2 event is. I think it will be another turn, because I do think if that would have been the politics of strength, I should have increased my strength now to get those draws, because as I said, those draws are extremely important if you start to build in a superior economy. But it isn't on top, I think, but I actually forgot which event is on top. I think the Independence Declaration it might be. Anyway, with no politics of strength on top, I go for 2 computer upgrades, which puts me at 12 science income, which is quite nice and allows me to hopefully go for a lot of technologies and at some point some Nobel Prizes. I have 4 civil actions left. I definitely want to have the reserves for 1 civil action. I increase my population once normally. I take the mechanized agriculture and the multimedia. I could have also taken modern infantry, maybe instead of increasing my population, to maybe be prepared for some H3 tactics, especially because the first copy of tanks is already gone, but I kind of felt okay with just having those fortifications, and rather wanted to have a way to increase my culture income with the multimedia and the mechanized agriculture just as a very cheap technology on one hand, and on the other hand, maybe allowing me to go for better impact preparation if I just go for 1 farm upgrade, which should improve my impact of balance and my impact of agriculture quite a bit later in the game. Instead of increasing population and taking multimedia, I could have also taken the movies, but with Nobel Prizes and with maybe me getting a leader like Einstein, maybe I could also end up getting PL with those team sports, in which case maybe also the multimedia could be better, but with Nobel Prizes coming, plus potentially me having Einstein, I felt like the additional science income might still be somewhat worthwhile. Of course, I could also go for Steve Jobs this turn, it would be a consideration, but I just felt that both Einstein and maybe Pierre could be better leaders. Fleming could also be a better leader, especially if I get him together with the second copy of movies. Mandela could be a strong leader. And if I go for Steve Jobs, my science production actually drops after losing Nobel. It just didn't feel like the ideal situation for him here. But he could be a fine leader, especially with helping with the happy faces. So maybe I should have considered him more here. And it is indeed the Independence Declaration, so the politics of strength is about to come. And of course, me not increasing my strength at a turn before could still cost me the politics of strength if it is revealed before my turn now. But there is now also an H1 event coming. Iraq increases his population twice, takes Mandela, who I think is just quite a strong leader if you can get him at a discount. And also Maria Theresa has maybe done her work. Irok at the moment can't increase his population again at the next turn. He then goes for the cavalryman, uses Maria's resources and the resources of the wave of nationalism to build 2 cavalrymen, has the Napoleonic army tactic and has now the strength lead, and is still able to go for a mine upgrade and takes the modern infantry. Taking that modern infantry could prepare him for something like modern army, which which made me a bit afraid of him. MV seeds, there's a vast territory coming, so MV has indeed seeded a colony in there, and if I wouldn't have taken the Suez Canal for expensive, maybe there indeed would have been a chance that he would have taken it away from me. And I was not willing to bid more than a knight in the 2 cards here, because I don't really need the additional yellow tokens and more population. The lost blue token could even cause some issues for me, so I was still willing to bid a knight, because at least I am gaining some additional production, and maybe it could help my opponents. Irok will win it now, maybe it will allow him to go for a bigger Mandela bonus, but I wasn't willing to send one of those units away that I need for my tactic. At the end, Irok wins it for a cavalryman. At least he's now the weakest again, so I'm not in danger of getting hit by the politics of strength. MV is also a bit weaker because he used the freedom of movement to put a rifleman into iron. An interesting choice, but he is maximizing his resource income here. He then goes for computers, 1 upgrade, takes an efficient upgrade, increases his population, develops the cavalryman, builds the cavalryman, still getting 3 draws, and takes the engineering genius. Sadly, with building the cavalryman, he is again stronger than me, meaning that if I would like to push, I am at the risk of not winning the politics of strength. But I have already drawn 2 more impacts, which very likely both will be nicely seedable for me, especially the impact of population will be extremely strong for me, but also the impact of architecture should end up being nice for me. So even if I don't win the politics of strength, I was thinking that I might have a chance of getting some strong impacts in, and if I now pause on seeding to win the politics of strength, it could be that I at the end maybe don't have enough politics phases. So ideally I just seed now and get a bit lucky with the politics of strength not being revealed, and then I could maybe make sure to get stronger to still have enough politics phases left to actually put all of the impacts into the deck that I would draw with the politics of strength, but I wasn't willing to sacrifice a politics phase here. But of course still hoping that maybe the politics of strength isn't on top. If I would have been weakest, then I think I would have waited, but Irok winning the colony maybe gives me the option now to seed. I put the impact of population into the deck. The politics of strength is revealed, so sadly MV will be the one getting the additional draws, and Irok will miss out on some draws. MV having already quite a culture lead now also getting the additional draws. I was a bit worried on my ability to be able to catch up to him, but I have now at least already 2 quite decent impacts in there. I increased my population with the ocean liner service, having 7 unused workers lying around, so those have to put to some good use now. And there are quite a bunch of leaders in the row now, and I have to decide which leader do I want to go for. All of the leaders could potentially be a choice. Fleming with the multimedia and maybe the option to get movies. If there would be a Hollywood in the game, I think he would be a lot more interesting. Without it, I think the other leaders should be better. And there is also Einstein and Pierre, which were the leaders that I mainly considered. I could go for some team sports with Pierre, and then with the Olympic Games, he might just give me overall quite a big amount of culture. Marie Curie could also be considered because of the strength bonus, because Irok, with having Air Force, Napoleonic Army, there's a chance he might get somewhat threatening, and then the 3 additional strength maybe could end up being relevant. But as I said, at the end it was a decision between Pierre and Einstein. And with me having such a big science income, with there being Nobel Prizes, and with there being potentially a space flight, and with Einstein being available for 1 civil action cheaper, I think Einstein is at the end a correct choice here. So I go first of all for the Air Forces. As I said, Irok has some strength potential, especially if he has actually the modern army drawn. Then things could actually get quite dangerous. And then I at least want to be better prepared for strength than MV. If I leave MV those Air Forces, he might have a nice shot being able to defend himself. But I thought it could actually be beneficial for me if Irok starts building up some strength and then chooses MV as a war target. So I really wanted to make sure that I have the air forces and that MV doesn't have access to them. It's a bit expensive to take them, of course, but I think it's worthwhile. I then take and play Einstein, increasing my science income, opening up the possibility to go for Nobel Prizes. And then I, with my remaining civil actions, decided to build a team sports. I finally fixing my happy faces and also building a cannon, making me the strength leader, sadly now after the politics of strength has been revealed. But yeah, there could still be another strength event coming. It could be a heavy face related event coming, and so that felt best to me. I could have also not built a cannon, not built a team sports, instead building a multimedia. That would be a bit of a greedy line, but I think there are a lot of ways how that play could get punished, especially with E-Rock still having that strength potential. I was not willing to do that commitment into multimedia with then maybe just getting punished on maybe having some issues on making me more threatening than MV or making it very likely that I'm not a war target. So that's my turn, and the next turn I hopefully can start scoring some Nobel Prizes. I was also still hoping for some more impact. Sadly, this time I don't get any, but at least I luckily still have the impact of architecture in hand. Now it's Irok's turn. He takes the revolutionary idea, the patriotism, so loads up some yellow cards, builds a cavalryman, upgrades the farm, takes the professional sports and increases his population, is now the strongest. Now it's MV's turn, he increases his population, takes the cavalryman, builds the cavalryman, builds another cavalryman, reveals the shock troops tactic, so he is now again the strongest, takes the reserves and the fundamentalism. And with this fundamentalism, which he can develop thanks to having the revolutionary idea 2 in the hand, he can now go for fundamentalism, and then he plays the reserves for 3 more cavalrymen, going for a second shock troops tactic, and that actually gives him quite some strength potential. So now we can see that it maybe was indeed relevant to be a bit careful in my position, as MV is now quite strong, and if Irok starts to building up some strength and prepares for a war, it could be a bit challenging for me now to be more threatening than MV. I see the impact of architecture this turn. I'm the weakest, but I just want to get my impacts in there. The National Bride is revealed, which sadly gives MV even more culture. I use the ocean liner service to increase my population. And my first instinct was to just take the fast food chains, take and develop the satellites, because the impact of progress is coming soon, and that would give me 6 additional points. Then maybe scoring a Nobel Prize, maybe building another unit or something along those lines. Just making sure that I have a wonder available. But I got a bit worried about Irok having quite some strength potential here, because if he has the modern army in hand, can't go for a big war immediately the next turn, maybe still even a solid war, especially if I leave him the military theory. But if I leave him military theory and military build-up, then I feel he has the potential to build up for quite a big war if he has a war in the modern army tactic. Of course, it would need to be those 2 cards. It's definitely unclear whether he has those. Even with the Napoleonic army tactic, he of course can go for a decent amount of strength, but that wouldn't be as threatening. But at this point I was quite a bit afraid. Of course I knew that the politics of strength has hit Irok, but he also had the Colossus draws early on. He at least made sure to take the multimedia. He just loaded up on some yellow cards instead of investing into culture income, which kinda made me feel like maybe he's planning to still go for a strength push or something. And with that I decided to play a bit more careful. I even considered taking cards away, like military theory, maybe taking military build-up for myself. At the end, I don't even do that much to improve my position and how much strength I can threaten, but I do improve them a little bit, and I leave me with a position where I'm maybe better prepared for getting more Nobel Prizes, more Einstein activations. I'm better prepared for impacts, and while I miss out on the fast food chains, there's still United Nations and spaceflight available. The spaceflight will be an even better wonder for me than the fast food chains, and if I don't get the spaceflight, then the United Nations at least give me 16 points with the potential of maybe evaluating an impact. And so at the end I felt fine with not taking the fast food chains here, even though of course that leaves it wonder for Irok, but I at the end was willing to do that. I go for the satellites, I developed the air forces, scoring my first Nobel Prize, building an air force, still getting 3 draws, making me the strongest. I take the revolutionary idea, the rockets, and then I play the reserves for resources. So I don't take the military theory, I don't take the military build-up, things that I definitely considered doing. But despite Envy having the shock troops and fundamentalism, I was still hoping that now that I'm playing it a bit carefully, leaving myself with a lot of resources, securing myself that copy of rockets, allowing it maybe to go for a more efficient unit than cannons. I was hoping that I would be able to, at the end, threaten more strength than Envy, in case Iraq tries to go for setting up a very big war. And with that, as I said, it could even be beneficial for me if Iraq gets a big war going, even though it maybe not even being as big, because Envy has now the possibility to defend, because if it's getting too big, it might again be bad for me, but if he hits Envy, that could be nice. And so I didn't want to spend 2 civil actions taking the military theory away, which I don't need that much for myself. I consider the military build-up a lot more, because that either Iraq or Envy will be able to get it, and it could be a big help for them to build up more strength, so maybe I should have taken that, but this revolutionary idea will just allow me to maybe immediately again at the next turn go for a Nobel Prize, and I was hoping that I will be safe without a military build-up, but I think it's a bit of a balancing act. I need to score some points because I'm behind. I need to catch up quite a lot of points, but I also can't play too greedily as there's the chance to get punished. Now at least I secured myself the rockets, and I have those many resources saved up. And with that, I was hoping that I don't need to take any of those cards and can also focus on scoring some more points. And I was also kind of hoping to get the spaceflight, and if not, at least the United Nations. I draw some cards, the impact of strength. Maybe I can make it work. Iraq goes for the professional sports, the military theory, the fast food chains developed the military theory, the revolutionary idea, but he doesn't go for any upgrades to modern infantry, and with that it really looked to me like that is not what he is planning to do here. He probably doesn't have a war and a modern army in hand, and instead rather wants to maximize his culture and takes the fast food chains here. Now it's Envy's turn. There's just barely the spaceflight revealed. He sees the impact of progress is revealed, so I start catching up some points via the impacts. Iraq also gets a decent amount out of this impact. Envy this turn switches to Marlene Dietrich, and sadly he will take the spaceflight away, which I think is a good move from him. It's a solid wonder for himself, and he takes a very strong wonder away from me. I will now get United Nations, but I was a bit unhappy that the spaceflight was taken away, but it was just quite likely that it would have been revealed before Envy's turn, and it's also not unlikely that he would take it away, and at least as long as Iraq isn't setting up for some very big military pressure. So now I might have to work with the United Nations. And the United Nations definitely gave me some options here. First of all, H4 starts, so sadly I won't get any more draws, which is a bit unfortunate. I really would have liked to maybe get some more draws going. And yeah, so for this turn, I have some different options, as always, in this game, and I have this impact of strength in hand. Potentially, I could just take the United Nations. It costs me 6 civil actions. I can take it, finish it, evaluate the impact of strength, and who knows, maybe I could even play it then at the next turn. So that's an interesting option, but I think that is not really possible because it's too greedy. While Iraq didn't go all in on preparing for a strength push, he still could declare war, has the patriotism, has enough science to go for both air forces and modern infantry, could easily go for at least one modern army with air force support, and if I finish the United Nations, I have only 14 resources at the next turn. I can go for 2 rockets, for another tactic, for example, which gives me plus 15, which is decent. I can also offer the military alliance, maybe this turn, but I could get hit by a war, and with that I think it's too greedy. I could of course take the United Nations and do something else. For example, I thought about taking and developing civil service, taking the United Nations, and then at the next turn I could finish it for 16 points, and if I am not confident enough that I will be able to win the impact of strength even after Iraq's turn, I then can either push it or evaluate it with the United Nations. So that could be a fine move, but it's also somewhat expensive. I then thought, is it possible that I can just not take the United Nations because it's quite a heavy investment? and maybe I can just go for the next turn. I might be able to do it, but in order to do that, I have to skip quite a lot of cards. Maybe that could end up being worthwhile, but at the end, I actually decided to not go for the United Nations, not this turn, and I also didn't really plan to get it at the next turn, and instead just completely maximize on my preparation for impacts, because, for example, going for civil service now and taking the United Nations already costs me quite some point. When we now see the alternative line, I offer the military alliance to MV, as I was more afraid of Iraq maybe being the one who can go for more strength than I do, as I was hoping to just put the impact of strength in naturally at the next turn. So I offer this pact, use the ocean liner service, go for the civil service, play the revolutionary idea, go for the multimedia, scoring a Nobel Prize. Thanks to building the multimedia, I will be able to go for an additional Nobel Prize, take the urban growth in the reserves. Now, with taking all of those cards, the United Nations will very likely fall off, but I, thanks to going for this line, will be able to first of all go for an additional Nobel Prize at the next turn. Or I wouldn't have gone for one this turn if I would have just taken United Nations and gone for civil service. So one additional Nobel Prize, one additional Einstein activation, already 7 culture more. I gain 3 additional culture income thanks to building that multimedia. With not investing a resource into the United Nations, I will maybe be able to yet again go for an additional urban building at the next turn, gaining even more culture income, gaining additional points for the impact of architecture that I've seeded. And I can also maybe go for mechanized agriculture upgrade to prepare for even more impacts. So I felt like all of those additional points add up, and maybe just make it better to not take United Nations for expensive here. I could have, of course, gone for a bit of a middle ground, where I go for some nice stuff this turn, but don't take as many cards so that the United Nations might not be discarded. At least MV can't finish the spaceflight and take the United Nations away. But Iraq, and I mean, those yellow cards just also help me scoring even more points. And Iraq, if he goes out of his way, I think he again can make the United Nations be discarded. Especially I leave him those yellow cards, so he can just load up on those yellows. For example, let's say play 2 revolutionary ideas, take the urban growth reserves, engineering, mechanized agriculture, and then the United Nations falls off anyway. Of course, that's somewhat expensive for him doing all of that, but those yellow cards at least are helpful, and he denies me from a wonder. So at the end, I just rather wanted to have those yellow cards for myself and just play it without planning on finishing the United Nations. I was still hoping that Iraq would go for a bit of a hate drafting move, but not against me, and rather against MV, because it would be quite nice if MV doesn't get the engineering, which is why I also considered it actually for myself, because MV has the spaceflight, and he could potentially develop 2 technologies and finish it, at least in regards of what science he has, but he doesn't have enough actions to do it. But if Iraq doesn't deny the engineering, and then something like mechanized agriculture or movies is still available, then we could actually have enough civil actions to go for 2 more techs and a spaceflight, which not only gives him points for the spaceflight, but also scores him another Nobel Prize. And with that, I was hoping that Iraq would deny the engineering, which still also could maybe help him a little bit with saving some resources and civil actions. So, yeah, a bit of I wasn't happy about how that played out. Maybe I should have just taken the fast 2 chains the turn before. The United Nations sadly being on a bit of an awkward spot. It would have been better if they would just be here, then I could do this turn and still plan on finishing the United Nations at the next turn, but now it all was a bit awkward. I kind of have to take it now if I really want to make it certain that I will get United Nations. And yeah, maybe there would be a better turn than what I played here. But yeah, at the end it just felt better to just prepare for impacts than forcing to get United Nations. I also built another Air Force, making me already even stronger, making me maybe a little bit threatening. Maybe I can also go for a blunder potentially, or at least my opponents have to consider that. Iraq seeds, and I was quite happy about the impact. It's the impact of variety, an impact that I have not seeded, but it's actually giving me plus 20 points, so I catch up to MV, and already I'm not that much behind him any longer. Irok goes for the engineering, increases his population twice, builds the air forces with the patriotism, is now at 53 strength, so sadly he is making it, also with taking another patriotism, that he can go for a decent amount of strength, so it won't be easy to make sure that I win the impact of strength. Envy offers me a peace treaty, which I accept, because maybe he doesn't want to increase his strength, and maybe it could potentially allow me to go for plunder, but very likely I want to see the impact of strength anyway, so I just accept the additional culture here. Envy increases his population, destroys a mine, builds a cavalryman, another cavalryman, and then finishes the space flight. So interestingly, it doesn't even go for single technology here, and scores only 16 points for the space flight, but makes sure to be at 60 strength. An interesting choice, because both I and Irok can get stronger than him again anyway. Maybe he was thinking that the impact of strength could already be in this deck, and then of course if he gets lucky and it is revealed at the right time, it could make quite a big difference, and at least he forces us to react maybe more into the military. But yeah, both I and Irok can just get stronger, so I'm not sure if maybe just getting 3 points for an additional technology here could have been better, and not destroying something. Of course, he also is maybe improving some impacts, like harmony and competition with that, so that could also be an indicator towards some of those impacts potentially. Now it's my turn. I have a way to make sure that I win the impact of strength, so I put that into the deck. And the impact of balance is revealed, which changed the stuff that I would do for my turn, because when I played my turn, I also went for a mechanized agriculture upgrade before this impact was revealed, because that would allow me, with the turn that I had planned, I would have gotten plus 8 points out of an impact of balance. Sadly, the impact of balance is already revealed now, but going for the agriculture upgrade also cost me some points in other regards, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing if that is revealed and I maybe get rewarded with other impacts and I can just maximize my amount of culture. But both impact of balance and impact of agriculture seemed like likely impacts to seed for my opponents, and with that, before the impact of balance was revealed, I really wanted to at least get one mechanized agriculture upgrade going. But now I will not do the upgrade. Of course, it could still make quite a difference for the impact of agriculture, but that impact alone doesn't really make it worth it, and I don't know if that one is in there also, so I rather did something different now, and I will still develop it and the rockets to score Nobel Prize and score some points with Einstein. I build another arena, fixing my happy faces. I build another multimedia. That is the thing that I do instead of the upgrade. It gives me 3 more cultural production and plus 3 for the impact of architecture. So even without the impact of balance revealed, it was already the question, do I really want to sacrifice those points? But I decided that I want to go for it. There could have been also an impact of architecture revealed, and I would have even more gone for the farm upgrade. But the additional culture could also potentially make a difference for the impact of culture. So it could even be a good turn of events that the impact of balance is already out, if, for example, something like an impact of culture is at the end coming, which would be a somewhat risky impact to seed for Envy, because I can just build another multimedia if I want to. But instead of building another multimedia, I will play the reserves for resources, build 2 more cannons going up to 70 strength, and it's just about the strength that I need to make sure that I win the impact of strength, because Irok has 19 plus 8, 27 resources, so 11 resources in addition to finishing the fast food chains. For 7 he can build an air force, and then he has 4 resources left, and the most he can do with those 4 resources is to develop the engineering and build another professional sports, and then he gets 16 strength, which puts him at 69, so with 70 I very likely should be able to win the impact of strength. And then I take those cards. Irok doesn't play an impact, plays the Revolutionary Deer, also can go for a Nobel Prize, plays the reserves, plays the patriotism, builds an air force, finishes the fast food chains for 23 points, then he destroys a coal mine and builds professional sports. So he is actually going for those 2 things, but it's not enough to overtake me for the strength, but still of course could help him for some other impacts. Maybe he also suspected that impact of competition could be in there, or maybe he even pushed it himself. The arena also helps him for the impact of architecture that I have put into the deck. Then he has the culture production at the end of his turn, and before the final impacts, we can see that I sadly have still quite some points to overcome. It is looking challenging, but not impossible. If maybe I'm extremely lucky, for some reason one of my opponents could have seeded Impact of Technology into the deck, that one would be extremely strong for me, but that one I sadly haven't drawn. And with that, it could be a bit challenging to catch up, but it's not impossible. If maybe the impacts of my opponents are about neutral, then I still have some strong ones myself, which could help me catching up. Impact of Strength gives me plus 14 against MV. Impact of Population is quite big. Architecture also gives me points against MV, so I am able to catch up with those impacts. But now we have to see if it will be enough. And also, of course, E-Rock and MV are somewhat close. E-Rock maybe is a bit better prepared for impact, so let's see how it will also play out between the two of them. The first impact is the impact of agriculture, and with that impact being in there, I was a bit unhappy about the impact of balance being revealed at my turn, because if it would have been a different impact, I could have gone for the mechanized agriculture upgrade and would have gotten plus 8 for the impact of balance, and also I think I did not only upgrade but also build an additional HA farm or something. And then I would have also gotten plus 10, I think, for the impact of agriculture. So plus 9, something along those lines. So yeah, that now with that impact revealed might be bad unless there's also an impact of culture coming. But I fall even more behind, and with that my hopes, of course, started to dwindle. The impact of happiness is revealed, so that's at least a neutral, even slightly good one for me against envy. But now I need better impacts than that. Now the impact of strength is coming, I catch up some points, also E-Rock is getting closer to MV. There's the impact of architecture, E-Rock is now overtaking MV and I am getting closer to him, but I still have to catch up quite a big amount of points. And the last impact is a strong one for me, it's the impact of population. MV gets plus 14, I get plus 24, so I have a high population count, but sadly the impact is not enough for me to catch up to my opponents. At the end, I am 9 points behind MV, and MV is 3 points only behind E-Rock, so for MV sadly it was very close and just barely not enough. And yeah, so I at least managed to get quite a bit closer, even without finishing a wonder. So despite me losing this game, it's still a bit of a showcase how you can maybe catch up with a big economy, but maybe I didn't play some turns ideally. If I maybe would have had a wonder, maybe things could have been better, but then I also would have missed out on a bunch of impact preparation, but I think especially impact of the space flight would have been quite big for me. I had some solid impacts drawn, and I think I did some calculations, and even if the impact of balance wouldn't have been revealed and I would have gone for the farm upgrades, I also would have missed out just on some points, 6 points, 3 for culture income, 3 for the architecture with not building the multimedia. And I think it might have been not been enough also, but it would have been extremely close. And while it at the end didn't make a difference for me, at the end the international tourism did make a difference. So it's a bit unfortunate for MV, because without that pact he very likely would have been the one to win, but E-Rock would have still been at the second place, so the culture gap between us is not big enough as that impact would have made, or that pact would have made a difference. If, however, the impact of balance wouldn't have been revealed and I would have gone for the farm upgrade and would have gotten rewarded by both impact of agriculture and balance, then on the other hand I might have been a bit angry about myself about accepting this pact, because then those additional points could have indeed maybe allowed me to finish before E-Rock. So quite a close game. I had a strong economy, I sadly didn't find nice enough ways to convert them into additional points. Still a nice civilization, I think. And I maybe just needed one more good impact, or maybe one. Yeah, that's of course always the downside with having the ocean liner service. That if you don't manage to get a farm upgrade going, then you have, even if you have otherwise a very great economy, some weak spots. And here I, at the end, sadly didn't have the time to fix that, which would have made me even more well-rounded, prepared for a lot of impacts. But now I had those weak spots, and sadly those two impacts, balance and agriculture, no, I got punished by them quite a bit, so I got punished for my low food income. Otherwise, maybe it could have been possible. Alright, so now the first one of the 3-player games has finished, sadly not with a good result for me, and now we can take a look at what that means for the standings. And with gaining 5 points against me in the last game, E-Rock is now the one in the lead. We all have 3 games finished, apart from Tim, of course, but yeah, that's of course obvious. So we 3 have all 3 games finished, and E-Rock is now 3 points in the lead, has 12 points. It was a very important result for him, and yeah, now I have to do better than him in the remaining games. But there are still 2 2-player games and 2 3-player games played for everyone, so still some opportunities to score some points. And if the next 3-player games goes well, then I can of course overtake E-Rock again, but the first one didn't went that great for me, and so at the moment E-Rock is in the lead in the standings. Alright, with that we are at the end of the video. I'm of course interested in if you maybe would have played something different, if you have seen something that I could have improved that, who knows, maybe even would have resulted in getting a better result at the end. And then I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.